Good evening and welcome, everyone. If I could call this meeting to order, and if we could please have a moment of silence for prayer or reflection, and perhaps in memory of Councillor Jim Turner. Thank you.
First item of business, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. I do have a number of things to add, if we may. We are going to have a quick presentation tonight from Merrick Brown regarding our COVID update. We are going to have a motion regarding the collective bargaining between the City of Medicine Hat and Local Union 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
What item will that be?
So that will be 7.3.
Okay.
And also, Mayor Clugston would like to make some closing remarks at the end of the meeting, so that would be 7.4.
Any other additions or deletions? Okay, before we start, the members of the Turner family, if you're here. I just want to say, that it was an absolute honor and a humble and a privilege to serve with your father. And he was such a great man, so charitable, and a great leader. Thank you. I think maybe Councillor Friesen might say something as well.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I can't see you. So please know my back is not turned to you out of lack of respect. Just a few words, not behalf of council, but from my heart, I guess. Jim Turner was such a valued member of this council. He was someone who was so community-minded, and throughout all his years in Medicine Hat, I'll always remember Jim almost freezing to death in his tent on the roof of Sobeys, years on end, in order to raise awareness and raise funds too, because he was so incredibly committed to this community. And this passion for community shone through everything he did on this council. He was always reading and researching new ways, new opportunities to strengthen our business community and our economic environment, our economic future. He was so interested in that. And he didn't ever give up, He said, well, if it wasn't that, let's think about this. What could be best for us? And this was not the only thing he deeply considered. Jim served in the last 8 years on the Public Services Committee, and our primary mandate there is exactly that, public service, people. His big heart included all aspects of the community, and he served and demonstrated a great care for our nonprofit and housing sectors, among many others. Case in point was his work with the food bank, but that's only one example of many where he contributed. Jim and I have had long-standing work on the Cypress View Foundation, which is Seniors Lodge and Housing, and we also work very closely with our regional neighbors on that committee. He cared very, very deeply about this committee in many ways, and I'm not joking about his big heart, as well as his concern for our economic future. Jim's face would light up with a big smile whenever he talked about his wife and family. He was so proud, and so filled with love for all of you. So I'm deeply saddened, more than that, and also very proud to pay deep respects for this fine individual, and valued colleague. Be at peace, our friend.
Very nice words, thank you. I'll open it up to any other counselor that would like to say anything. Counselor Turnbull?
Thank you. Yes, I sat here next to your father 4 years. And when we had a break or time, he would talk about his children, and his face would absolutely light up the room when he talked about his grandkids. And he was telling me, well, this past July, Phil, he said, my food bill skyrocketed. My grandkids were home. He said, we were just going back and forth to the store. But Jim also served on Energy Committee with Councillor McIntosh and myself, and was a valuable member to that committee because we have gone through some very trying times when it comes to our utility businesses. Both gas and power and environmental utilities. So I will miss your dad terribly.
Thank you. Counselor Varga?
Yeah, I think I share the same. I got to sit beside Jim for 8 years. So once in a while, the old shoulder would come over and the elbow would come over. So whether it was talking about sports or any other factor that he had with the community was always a thrill for me with him because his knowledge is unfounded. He had a lot of knowledge in different things, not only in the sports field, which he was part of it, in the food field, everywhere that he went. And he was always trying new and innovative things to do all the time, right? So he was always excited coming to council every couple of weeks, and he's got a new thing going or a new venture that he wants to get into all the time. So the news was shocking when that happened that night, when that happened, and I don't know, when you lose a friend, it's a tough time. So God bless you guys.
Thank you. Counselor Dumanowski?
Worship, a lot of wonderful things, appropriate things to be said about Jim. For the public, I think what you need to understand is there's significant challenge and sacrifice when you're in the public realm, and people see you in one dimension. And in many cases, you are opening yourself to attack and challenge when you sit around this table. But what often is lost but should surface is the other side of the person, and that is the compassionate, the introspective, the integrity of a person who's willing to put themselves in this public light and ultimately do it in sacrifice for the betterment of the community. And I have the privilege of knowing Jim as well around this table, his time here, but also being having the opportunity to live across the street from him. And one of the things that people need to know about Jim is, as much as he had passion about everything around this table, he loved his family and he loved his gardening, he loved his ability to take his hands and get him into the soil and create God's creation in many ways through his own determination and time and effort. And that's a balance that everybody has to strive for in life, and he had it. So he worked tirelessly around this table and in the community, which we've heard of, but he also worked tirelessly to see and personally be gratified by, his family and again, what he could do in his own yard. And I think that's a personal connection that a lot of people didn't get to see in Jim. And I'll leave it on this. He will be missed for sure. And this isn't just paying homage to a person who gave of his time around here, but it is. But it's also living up to that spirit of leaving this earth and doing something good to it and leaving it better than when you first got here. And Jim did that in spades. So I wanna pass on my condolences to his family and also to this community. And I wanna thank them for the privilege of knowing Jim.
Thank you. Counselor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, I had instantly when I heard the news, I kind of reached out on social media among many others that paid tribute to a fine man. honestly, you know, he regaled me. I'm a bit of a sportsman myself, and his fishing stories and his, maybe his fishing stories were told many times, and I just love to hear his latest escapades. You know, I honestly think, and this is the integrity of the man, that he doesn't want to even be known really as a city councilor or even, you know, even though we feel that this is a fairly lofty position, and I do respect it. But more importantly, I think he wanted to be known and his legacy as a committed father, a committed husband, and really a guy that just wanted to give back to his community. And for that, Jim, I thank you. I'm trying to model this same way, and I feel like you're a mentor to me, so rest in peace.
Councilor McIntosh.
Thanks, Your Worship. So I first had the privilege of meeting Jim back in my Spectrum days, going back 15 years or so. We bought all our pop through Jim's store, and every afternoon during Spectrum, when we were running out of pop and you had to make a call down to Sobeys to get a load delivered, it was Jim Turner that showed up driving his minivan and helping us out. He and I joined council 8 years ago. And I will say this, we had lots of debates where we were on different sides of the fence. And there was never once where Jim ever, the next time I saw him, held anything against anybody who had a difference of opinion with him. I would walk into energy meetings some days thinking, oh, Jim might be a little upset with the last discussion. And it was always, how you doing, Jamie? And you knew that was from his heart. He will be missed in this city.
City Manager.
Your Worship, thank you for just a moment. On behalf of the 1,000 employees that make up the City of Medicine Hat and our staff team, who looks to City Council for community leadership and for the strategies that will lead this community forward. Jim Turner was a leader, a true leader with the courage of his convictions and the passion of a real community leader. He will be missed. He will be appreciated for everything that he did for us. And I can tell you on behalf of the 1,000 people that make up this organization, we thank you for Jim Turner.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, if we can move on. Thank you. You're welcome to stay, but I recognize it. You might want to go.
Adoption of the minutes. Minutes from our September 20th meeting.
Any errors or omissions? All right, seeing none.
Moving on now to presentations. As I mentioned before, we have parachuted Merrick Brown in tonight just for a very quick COVID update.
Your Worship, members of council, within emergency management, we have multiple phases. The phase that we're in right now is mitigation. This is one of the last phases that we ever see within any type of emergency, and we've been in this phase for quite some time. And mitigation really relates to, in the most simple terms, is reducing or eliminating the threat to the point that it is no longer an emergency. Where this really comes down to, and I've repeated this time and time again, and it couldn't be any more true right now, is vaccination efforts. I'll speak on behalf of myself on this one, Alberta Health Services, members of the public. Now is absolutely the time to take action. If you compare Alberta to any other province within Alberta or within Canada, we are by far the worst, if not double any other province. In fact, we're seeing roughly half of all cases throughout Canada. It's a time definitely right now to take action. Throughout this process, we've seen, meaning in mitigation and vaccinations, we've seen a number of different initiatives throughout, not only the province, but also the federal government and even globally. And where this really comes down to is a number of efforts. And one thing that I want to focus on right now, the first one, is what's commonly known as the Restriction Exemption Program. The Restriction Exemption Program allows for multiple options. So the best option to get into various facilities, and I'm going to speak on behalf of not only the city, but also businesses that have implemented this. The best option for this one in order to gain access is get vaccinated. It's as simple as that. But I understand, and I think we all understand that's not the only option, and there are alternatives. The alternatives to that would rapid testing. So the province isn't necessarily saying you must get vaccinated, because there are alternatives. So there's rapid testing. And if you legitimately cannot get vaccinated, there are medical exemptions. And so I'm speaking on behalf of the city and also the business community. This is the way that we're going to get out of it. There's no other way. I don't know how many times I have to repeat this, but this is the option. It is mitigation. And it's not only the city, it's not only the province, but you're seeing this globally. So within the city, specifically within our operations, we have since implemented the Restriction Exemption Program in our recreational and cultural facilities, such as Family Leisure Center, Co-op Place, Esplanade, Kinplex, and it's largely successful. And when I say largely, it's not fully successful, meaning we still do have struggles, no different than other businesses. And this is a time where I plead for patience for the business community, for the city, all of these different aspects who are trying to get through this and trying to do the right thing. Speaking on the vaccine topic, is we are trying everything in our power, meaning the city is trying everything in our power to break down every single barrier that is possible or that is out there for members of the public to get vaccinated. Over the next 3 weeks, in fact, 3 weekends, you will see our mobile vaccine clinic traveling around the city. And we're actually trying to get this in areas that are very open, very walkable, very visible. So you won't see this at city facilities. You'll see this in open areas. You'll see this in areas that are readily accessible to the public. And the benefit of these is you can walk right up to these clinics, no appointment needed, and get vaccinated. And still have all of the benefits that are seen through the province right now, all of those perhaps financial, incentives, all of those still apply through these. And in fact, at times they even have little other things that they throw in there as well. Throughout the past, occasion when we actually brought the mobile vaccine clinic down, we saw success with that. I personally talked to individuals that were waiting in line to get their vaccination, and the common theme is, I didn't need to book an appointment. It was there. I just walked down the street. And so we want to do everything that we can as an organization to help our residents. Because once again, we are in mitigation, and we need to get out of this somehow, and that is how we do it. It goes without saying as well that we are supporting Alberta Health Services in any possible way that we can. There is a health crisis right now. And so whatever this may be, from Alberta Health Services locally, we will respond to their requests and we will assist them. To date, we have not had any direct requests as it relates to health capacity, ICU capacity, but we are ready if it's needed, whatever we can do. At this point, the request from locally Alberta Health Services is to please, please promote vaccinations. They need it. Our hospital needs it. The local healthcare staff needs it, meaning for our residents to get vaccinated, and just do the right thing. On a positive note to all of this is we are starting to see now a decrease in our active case counts locally. But I've said this time and time again before, that should not be a time that we should relax our measures. This is actually a time when we should strengthen those efforts, meaning us as members of the community, because we want to keep those numbers down. So today, 574 active cases. Keep in mind, we're still incredibly high, and in fact, incredibly higher than what we've seen before. Not so much that we saw perhaps last week or the week before when we were topping close to that 700 number, but still, we need to bring that number way down. I wanted to provide you with this slide here. This shows locally what our vaccine trends by age group. And I remember myself standing and doing a press conference with Alberta Health Services, with our local medical officer of health, pleading for individuals to get vaccinated, pleading for those age groups that we have identified to get vaccinated. And it's still low. Our higher age groups or older age groups, we're good. We're actually at that provincial average, at that threshold where we meet the same provincial average, so that 75 plus, even that 60 to 74, getting close to there. Where we need work is definitely in that 20 to 39 age group. And in fact, the 12 to 19 age group is increasing at quite an exponential rate, to the point that that age group has since bypassed the 20 to 39 age group. So that 20 to 39 age group is our focus group right now, is what we need to target. We're still below the provincial average. We are, as of Friday, 72.2% of eligible residents vaccinated, compared to the provincial average at 74.5. But I also do want to put a bit of a silver lining on this as well and put some positivity to this. Things are working. People are hearing this message and hearing the message from Alberta Health Services to get vaccinated, because we're actually increasing at a higher rate than what the province as a whole is increasing. So we're hoping in the coming weeks that we will meet that that provincial average. But we are lower, and that means we still have work to do, and we will continue to have work to do. If we continue in this current state of not being vaccinated or having this rate, it's not going to end. And in fact, it's going to get worse. And so standing here, I plead for people to get vaccinated, because we are far from out of this. Thank you very much.
Excellent presentation, Merrick. Any questions? Councillor Dumanowski, Council, you can use your request to speak.
Sorry, Your Worship. Thank you, Merrick, for the update, and I think it's not only prudent that you come before council to kind of give the state of affair, but to continue the mission of promotion in conjunction with Alberta Health Services. As a city, I know we're doing the same, and I think as individuals, we certainly are advocating for the same. So the bus that is going to be going to locations, you did indicate that it would not be city facilities for a lot of reasons, and it would be open, walkable community spaces. How will the public, is there a way for the public to know where those are based on, even if it's the day before or that day? Kind of like photo radar, sometimes you hear it on the radio. We're currently at this location. And I don't mean to make light of it, but is there a means to get that out literally in that fashion out to the public so that that day or the day before they're contemplating, hopefully finally to do this, they can know with certainty that this bus is located at this point during these hours at these times?
So excellent question. Through the chair is absolutely, we will communicate in advance from this. And a little bit of a unique strategy with this one is because on a week over week basis, we're going to continue to evaluate what are the most optimal areas. And so we're not necessarily going to communicate. So as the first weekend, it's going to be here. Second weekend, it's going to be here. Third weekend is here. Because we're going to evaluate it on a regular basis, determine what is the best location. As I had mentioned earlier, is we did see success with the first mobile vaccine clinic, and I had mentioned previously is it was almost a little bit of a test or a beta test, and so given that, we're bringing that back and going to increase that even more, and so we're going to use the same kind of process with that one: is evaluate the location. Was it successful? If it was not, why wasn't? And look at some possible mitigations or possible other actions for that. If we had great success the first time, we may actually place it in the same location. But time will tell on that one. So to summarize that, the answer for this one, absolutely, we will communicate in advance and use some other, obviously, communication strategies to ensure we reach as many of our residents as possible, given the fact that you don't need to book an appointment, you just walk up and get your vaccination. And they offer the varieties of, I guess, manufacturers, whether it be Moderna, Pfizer, all of those. So you have your pick as to what you can get on that one. So no barriers with this one, and that's our focus with that one, is to make it as accessible and easy as possible for people.
Thank you, Merrick.
Councillor Friesen, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Merrick, for your ongoing, I mean, when you come here, you're sincere, you're to the point, and you make such a good point, and I've always appreciated your presentations. Just, I thought I would ask, you've reactivated the Emergency Operations Center. Just thought maybe people might be wondering, like, what is that, and why do they have to do that? And how does that tie with the work you're doing, and does that have a beginning and an end, or what does that look like?
So it's interesting that you say that, and through the chair. So what the Emergency Operations Center allows us to do is respond to emergencies as from a city focus rather than, let's say, a departmental focus. So it allows the, I guess, the increased resource availability as it relates to emergency response. And so it also increases the collaboration efforts internally within the city, such as an example is given higher priority to certain items or certain strategies and objectives. But also it increases the ability, or that, I should actually say, it breaks down some of the communication barriers that may exist with external partners. And so we can make decisions faster. We can collaborate that much more on decisions, and it kind of, in a way, it takes away some of the bureaucracy of the decision-making processes within the city so that we can respond that much faster to items. No different than what it would be in a flood, fire, various items like this. Things are obviously a little bit different as it relates to a pandemic. This, in all honesty, this is the first pandemic incident that I've ever responded to, and hopefully the last. So we've had to really kind of modify the way that we operate within the Emergency Operations Center from this one. And given the fact this is 19 months now. 19 months, I never thought that I'd be in this for as long, and all the individuals here and members of the public never thought that this we'd be in this for this long as well. And so looks a little bit different based on the type of emergency that you're actually involved in.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hirsch.
So Merrick, as always, thanks for the feedback and education to our citizens. I'm wondering about where do we go from here? And, you know, you're kind of right in front of the fire, quite frankly. Your job is to kind of stay close to this. I know that the emergency systems been activated again. As far as next steps for suggestions for council or actionable items or anything else, I mean, certainly the last time you were in front of us, we talked about advocacy on vaccinations, mobilizing the mobile truck unit that's going out there, which we have. Certainly doing a PR piece to say get your vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. Any other, what are we missing? Anything that we need as council to kind of consider? I think we're trying our best to obviously work as much as we can within our capacity. Any feedback for us?
That's just to share, that's a difficult question for me to answer at this point. And the only reason is I need to see how this works, meaning the restriction exemption program, the mobile vaccine clinics. However, if we're staying in this kind of perhaps this polarizing view of vaccine versus non-vaccine, there may be some additional conversations that need to occur based on this, because we can't stay like this. Even comparing to other municipalities right now, is perhaps the polarizing views are as apparent as ever. And we need to support everybody that's trying to make a difference in this. And so we will see in the coming weeks as to perhaps what that looks like. I'll be honest, my optimism is there. However, my frustration is also starting to show through.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Could I get a motion for reception?
So moved.
If we could vote. That was unanimous. Thank you, Merrick.
Our next presentation is item 4.1. There's some background information in your packets here under the Public Services Committee meeting of September 27th, item 5.1. So we have James Will, who's our Director of Parks and Recreation, here to talk to us about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan Preliminary Report Summary.
Welcome, James. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. So I have the privilege to be able to talk to you about an exciting topic, our recreation facilities, our Parks and Rec Master Plan, but also an equally confusing topic because we're doing a couple of things at the same time. So the intention tonight is to be able to clarify where we're at in the process, talk a little bit about the next steps for public engagement and the path forward. So this evening, I'll talk about status update on the plan itself, but also with the facilities review that we're conducting at the same time, and a brief overview of our engagement summary that we are completed with the community for the master plan, but also commencing on the facilities review. Some of the prominent themes that we've heard from our engagement activities with our stakeholder groups, the general public, and talk about key areas that we're addressing in the master plan, the strategic document itself. And then I want to talk a little bit about the facilities update. So what are we actually trying to resolve? What questions are we trying to answer for the community and for council? And what critical success factors do we see going forward for both the plan implementation, but also for our facilities review and making major decisions on facilities, as well as obviously next steps. So just to clarify, with the draft Parks and Rec Master Plan document, we're about 90% complete to issue this to the public. We're intending to issue it next week or the week after to the public for review throughout October and into November. It is a consolidation of two different plans. So it is the Park System Management Plan consolidated with the Recreation Master Plan. So it is not a brand new document. There's elements that we've updated based on our public engagement and feedback from our stakeholder groups, but we didn't start from scratch. And so we were in a great spot to be able to see from the 2010 and 2011 plans and be able to consolidate those into a document that's also updated. We've completed the master plan engagement on the initial draft of the plan, and what we're going to do is issue the plan, as I mentioned, out for public consumption, for public feedback as well on that. The facility review we're conducting concurrently. So that's what people tend to be interested in. So we talk about the strategic document, which is our master plan document, but really what it comes down to is we want to talk about the bricks and mortar. So what's happening with our aging facilities? We know that that we've talked to the community about this. It's come out in engagements. So we've heard it at our pop-up locations. We've heard it through our feedback, through our surveys. It certainly is a hot topic. The draft master plan will be issued in October, and adoption of the master plan and direction on facilities will happen in December, is our plan. And so the final decision on what's happening with facilities is not our intention to come forward in December. It's really bringing forward what we've heard from the community, from our major stakeholders and our user groups, for direction from council. So while we would bring the master plan forward for adoption, we'll be looking for direction in December from council. Our engagement summary. So we've gone through an IAP2 model, really, when we looked at that for engaging our community with relation to the master plan and also what we intend to do moving forward with the facility decisions. We had 400 responses to Shape Your City, so that's an online survey tool. We had 170 different user groups that were invited. We had pop-up tents, stakeholder meetings, both internal and external, with large organizations and Medicine Hat College, Medicine Hat Exhibition and Stampede, the school divisions. So we certainly did meet with a number of stakeholder groups in addition to the surveys that we did. As I mentioned, we utilized the spectrum of public participation, the IAP2 model, and really it's appropriate for consolidating documents. So we had lots of elements of the 2010 and the 2011 documents that were still valid, but required some updating. There were new elements, especially when it comes to things like environment and stance on that were prominent issues that the community brought forward. Some of the priorities we've seen have changed from the community. Certainly we see aquatics as still being a major priority for our community, outdoor amenities, and we've updated those accordingly. What we've heard, I think if you were to look at every word on here, something that would jump out at you is really that the public wants to be involved. So we see community engagement. The public has a desire to be involved, but also to understand the decisions. And that means understanding the data behind it. It means understanding why we got to a point that we got to where we're talking about what are we doing with aging facilities. This was specific to our master plan document, but we heard that the community wanted to be involved with decisions around facilities, as they should be. Engagement, inclusion, accessibility, those were all common themes that we heard. So when you see those jump out, a lot of those are inclusiveness in decision-making and being able to understand the magnitude of what we're facing as a community when it comes to aging infrastructure. This is one element in the document that I wanted to draw some attention to, and this is actually the regions of the community that are actually, this is the same breakdown of the community that we see in our municipal development plan. So we are really taking direction from our municipal development plan that was adopted by council to move forward with our master plan document. There's also breakdowns of what we find in the different residential, commercial districts throughout the city. So I would encourage people, as you're reviewing the plan, to take a look at the different areas of the city. It really helps us when we plan for future amenities. It helps us when we look at where is recreation? Where do we see structured activities? Where do we see actual facilities, the bricks and mortar that we talk about? And how do we see opportunities for growing parts of the community? We look at future plans for where the community grows, and how do we address those when it comes to recreation? Some of the prominent things that we heard. So as I mentioned, the community wants to be involved in decision making, but the community values need to be part of that. So when it comes to, do we make a decision on a facility based on a business case? Do we make a decision based on how much it costs to maintain the existing facility or replace it with something new with maybe a longer lifespan? That the community said it needs to also fit our community values. And so when our next step is to go and talk to the community when we say we want neighborhood amenities. What does that mean? Does it mean bricks and mortar facilities? Does it mean program parks? Does it mean more inclusive spaces that have more than one type of activity that can be done in that space? And that's really where we're at with moving out to the community for that. Communication needs improvement. And I think most surveys in organizations, whether they're internal or external, it tends to come up as a common theme that communication really needs to improve. When it comes to decisions around our major facilities, that is really why we're out here in front of the community now, is we have major decisions facing the community that will impact them for the next 50 years or more, and they need to be communicated appropriately. Community involvement in planning. So when it comes to planning for things such as repairing or replacing or looking at moving facilities, if that was a potential decision for the community, they want to be involved with that. Number 4 is very interesting because it is changing how we see recreation, not only in our community, but across our country. So a barrier to recreation is busy lifestyles, which is why we see unstructured play. We see unstructured activities where people want access to that, whether it's indoors like a gymnasium where they can go and play an unstructured sport like a pickup ball, basketball, or if it's out in a park space, that space needs to be programmed to a certain degree, but allows for a lot of spontaneous use because people don't have enough time to commit to multiple things during the week, and we're finding that. We find that with our partner organizations that we talk to. We know that lots of sports organizations are facing the same thing. One of the things that we saw as a theme is that the city needs a clear environmental stance. So what is the community's looking to the city to say we need an environmental ethic or stewardship stance. And we know that we have a role as Parks and Rec in maintaining environmental reserve spaces. But for what reason? Are we doing it for an environmental standpoint? Do we do it for recreation or leisure opportunities? Or do we have a stance on this is what we need to do? What is guiding those decisions? And that's something that the community really kind of leads back to communication around why we're making decisions, not only around facilities, but around our environmental stance. This slide was in the presentation and the background information that you have in front of you, and has likely probably caused some questions in the community around if we're saying that we have so much more than other communities, why are we talking about this? Is this a positive thing, a negative thing? We saw it as a very positive thing. This is very much a quantitative comparison to other communities. It's not to all communities, it's to a number of communities that we surveyed, including some within the province, Red Deer, Calgary, Edmonton, lots of other communities similar size to us across Canada. This also includes facilities that are at this point closed. So we have Heights Pool that is closed, we have Crestwood Rec Center, and we have Moose Arena, which is currently closed. At the time that this was put together we don't have a final decision on what we're doing with those facilities. Now, when you look at that, you may jump to a conclusion that it means, well, we'll close those facilities. What this doesn't do is it doesn't do a qualitative comparison. So this is really quantitative. When we look at comparing numbers, trail network, I think trails can be easier to compare. But when you look at an outdoor pool, if you look at a neighborhood outdoor pool versus a destination pool in another city, I always use Henderson Pool as an example in Lethbridge, not all pools are equal. And so having one more pool does not necessarily mean that the qualitative aspect is there. We know our facilities are aging. We know that we do have a decision in front of us that has to happen with, especially around aquatics. And that's something that I wanted to clarify this because I know that this was information that we were getting a lot of questions on. Key areas that the plan addresses, again, I'd encourage you to go and peruse the plan when we publish it for feedback and comments. But sport tourism, so we're seeing this as a really growing area. Sport tourism, agritourism as well. So we see lots of people looking for experiences, but also looking for, if I'm coming to your community, what else is there for me to do? If I'm gonna come for a hockey tournament, are there other things for me to do? Volunteers, we know that our volunteers are facing a downward trend in Canada and especially in our community. And we see that because we have a strong volunteer base and we're very fortunate as a community to have that. But volunteers are facing the same issue that people are who are participating in sports activities. There's a downward trend, and because people don't have time. So how do we manage our relationship with our volunteers? Do we see that as volunteers are part of our asset? Obviously, they're a huge strength for our community. It's why we're able to attract a number of national, provincial, world-class events here, and it's really based on the strength of our volunteers. So taking a more firm position on how do we interact with our volunteers and making sure that they're also getting something from the experience as well. Innovative opportunities, risk tolerance. So what is our tolerance on risk? We've gone through committee and we've heard that we want to be smart about where we take risk. We're using public funds, but we want to make sure that we're taking a step in the right direction to try new things. We don't always have to be the leader of trying something new, but we've done things like autonomous mowers. So we've tried those in park spaces. So the robot mower, we've piloted that, and to varying degrees of success. We know that we're not done with it. We know that we've used goats for weed control, and that's something we'll continue to do. It's innovative, and it's a different way to get a solution to a problem. Park configurations for new neighborhoods and existing spaces. Our spaces need to be purposeful, and especially because our community is saying, I want to be able to go and use a park space for spontaneous use, and I'm very busy, so it needs to be something that I can go and do when I have the time to do it, but it needs to be more than just an open park space. Is there a need for that in the community? Absolutely. But is there a need for large park spaces that are manicured that aren't programmed and there's maybe not other amenities there? I think we can look to the community for feedback on how we can do better with that. The facilities update. So we've initiated stakeholder engagement. We've initiated with our first meeting with our ICF, Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework. So we've had our first conversation and planning conversations right now with other stakeholders in the community, as well as working on our public engagement strategy. We're commencing public engagement throughout October, and we recognize there's a desire to really understand the business case further. So when we talk about facility replacement, we talk about, well, maybe it's less costly to the community to build something new. Well, what does that mean, and how do we arrive to that decision? Desire to understand what the issues and questions are that we're trying to answer. So before I get into some of the questions, why are we doing this now? So we have aging facilities. We have other facilities here in our community, like the YMCA. We know they have a downtown capital campaign on for $3 million. Curling, we know curling's an aging facility, plus our facilities. A lot of them are reaching end of life. A lot of them are the same vintage. We also know Eckodale is facing lots of aging infrastructure there. It was built in the 1980s with infrastructure funding. We are at a go, no go point. So we are at a spot where we know we have an immediate issue with moose. We know we've got other aquatics facilities that have immediate repair issues. And we are at a spot where our capital plan, when we look at the next 29 years from now till 2050, we're facing $42.5 million of capital upgrades. When you look over 29 years, that maybe doesn't sound like a lot. It is very front-loaded. So we have a lot of immediate decisions that have to face the community right now or within the next 5 years. And the time right now is to talk about that and say, what are we going to do with this? Are we going to replace facilities? Are we going to maintain and enhance? Or do we look at a different plan or a combination of all of those? The question we sometimes hear is, didn't we know that facilities were aging and planning for repairs? Yes, we do capital planning. We have a capital plan until 2050. We work with our facilities management department around that. The issue is because, as I'll say it again, that they're so front-loaded, the immediate decisions that have to happen in the next few years, that it's time for us to talk about, is it prudent for us to continue to maintain older facilities, which in some cases it may, or do we look at a replacement plan? Do we look at a strategy where the community gets behind it and says, this is what we want to do going forward? They're large decisions that have to be made, and capital budgets, when they come through, we certainly put in the appropriate amount looking for maintaining facilities. But as the facility decisions become larger and larger, we felt it was time to go out and start talking to the community. Why don't we know the costs of replacing facilities yet? The analogy I use is, how much does a car cost? It really depends on what you want to buy. And when we look at facilities, if we look at outdoor destination facilities, they're obviously more costly to build and operate. We know that consolidating ice rinks is more operationally efficient to operate. We know that we have Kinplex that operates approximately 2/3 the cost of 2 independent rinks. So we know that there's synergies putting them together. We've worked some of the business cases, but to a certain point that says, okay, there's merit in us going out and talking to the community about this. I'll assure you that there's not a final plan that says everything is done behind the scenes. We do want that input from the community. So some of the questions that we want to ask the community and get input on. So what level of service does the community desire and need? So when it comes to the current facilities that are closed, what do we need for capacity and for growth of sports? Exploring the cost and opportunity costs of reopening and investing in aging facilities. So we know that some of our older facilities, they're very much valued facilities, but as far as amenities and interactive things to do when it comes to some of our pools, do we update those? There is an opportunity cost when we do that. If we put money into updating older facilities, there's a cost to do that, but you likely forego replacement or building new when it comes to that point. Is there a desire for next level planning? Should we plan to replace aging facilities? So getting the community's feedback and input on that. Also, there's certainly a desire for the community to review business cases associated with various options. The number one thing we want to do is have the community understand the decision that we have in front of us. Also, there needs to be consideration for other community priorities. When we talk about recreation facilities, it's easy to talk about that in isolation, recognizing that the community is also facing a financial challenge when it comes to financially fit, other aging infrastructure within other departments, so we certainly recognize that there's a lot of tough decisions facing the city going forward. Critical success factors, so we certainly need community and council support moving forward, but we really need community participation. So part of this is to educate the community over the next month and continue as we come back to council is what is facing the community for decisions, and we need community involvement. Internal and external collaborations, so with our stakeholders, user groups, the general public, resourcing plan for execution, so does the business case make sense and do we have a plan in place that we can actually follow through on? Decisions need to be innovative and business-driven, and of course, when it comes to our master plan document, we certainly don't want a document that we put on the shelf and not refer to. We want it to be agile, nimble, and adaptable. Next steps, just to reiterate in closing here, so we'll provide a draft master plan for public review in October, conduct engagement for facility review through October as well, and the master plan will bring forward for adoption once we get feedback from the community in December is our plan, and then a facilities review looking for direction from council on the options that we've heard from the community and also the business case that comes with those options in December. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Excellent presentation, James. Any questions? Councillor Somraj.
Thanks, Mayor Gluckston. Director Will, I guess I think it's important to set expectations for the public regarding the consultation process that we're about to embark on. Given that the plan is 90% complete, what should those expectations be here? Since the critical question for a lot of people are multi-use facilities versus neighborhood facilities.
Through the chair, so the engagement is largely complete on the master plan strategic document. And then, so we're very much at the beginning point when it comes to facility decisions. That's the part that can be somewhat confusing when you end up mixing a strategic document, but some also very immediate decisions that have to happen with facilities. So we are putting the plan out that we've already talked to the community about as far as the master plan, the strategic document when it comes to recreation, leisure, park spaces. But when it comes to decisions on facilities, we're very much at the beginning of that. So we're just starting our engagement.
So just so I understand you, so the master plan is kind of an overarching thing that doesn't say specifically what some of these other decisions will be. It's just kind of guiding principles about what you hear in the community about what's important to them. Is that correct?
Through the chair. So your municipal development plan would really guide how you develop your city and what are some of your principles about development. We would take the next level below that and say our strategy for how do we see recreation, how do we support, whether it's a city run or if it's run by nonprofit or for profit, what's for the betterment of the community. And when it comes to planning, it's really more of a planning document. We'll certainly provide guidance when it comes to decisions, just like the MDP does. The MDP currently supports multi-use sites. That's the direction that we've taken through the Recreation Parks and Rec Master Plan. Then when it comes to facility decisions, that's really the decision on one specific thing that we haven't really gone to the community yet and talked to them about, although we've heard it through our engagement when it comes to the master plan engagement.
So I guess my next question is, I mean, there are a number of candidates in the election that have already staked out positions about how this master plan or, you know, what some of these decisions are going to be. How are you going to reconcile that? And given that the election is coming up and we'll obviously have people here with views on some of these specific things ahead of December, how do you reconcile the plan with candidates' positions?
I'm not sure that that's a question James can answer because that's a political question, but you want to take a stab at it, James, or?
Through the chair, we'll certainly bring back what we hear from the community.
Councillor Varga?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I have a few things written down here, so I'll start at the top. It's great that we're revisiting the master plan again. I mean, after 10 years or 11 years, lots happens within our community. We grow, things happen, things age, so it's great that we look at that. Do you think 10 years is the right timeline to revisit this all the time? Or, that's my first question, should we do it earlier than 10 years or 11 years? I guess that's my first question.
Through the chair, ideally, we'd have more of a living document that we'd be able to update. And that's really our plan is we'll have a document that contains all of our background data, but really a reference guide that we're going to continue to have to update. I think 10 years is the edge of where you'd want to go. We see new sports that have come up in the last 10 years. We were only briefly talking about pickleball in the past plan, and now it's a major growing sport in our community. So.
I love the fact that you say that it's a living document, because I think our municipal development plan is also that. On MPC, we talked about that it's a living plan that you can always make a few changes to. And I think that's important, because change does happen in the community over a period of time, and it might happen fast or it might happen over a number of years, but I think it's important that we can make those changes. And I think the master rec plan is the same kind of document that we want to do, where it's a living plan where we can make changes as we see fit. So I think that's important. I always have concerns on responses to surveys and to get information from people or user groups. In those 170 user groups, how many people were involved in that? Or was it just the head guys, like the presidents of these user groups?
Through the chair, in some occasions we had one response on behalf, so I don't have all the data about how many participated in that from the board. We had fairly good, robust responses from 40 of the user groups that were major players or major stakeholders, like user groups, hockey, ringette, the groups like that.
So are you going to go to them again and ask them for their feedback on what you're presenting here today? Again, to get that feedback again and say, hey, are we doing a good job, or are we on the right path? Are we going down the right road, and get that feedback from them, and hopefully more people get engaged in this opportunity to get engaged?
Through the chair, yeah, so on two different fronts, so both the master plan development, but also specific conversations with user groups when it comes to the facility decisions. That will be almost a resetting of that, because we have a more focused topic to say when it comes to actual these facilities, let's talk about that. When it comes to the document that we've created, we certainly will be going back to the groups. We won't be conducting the entire engagement process again, but we'll certainly be directing them to review the plan.
This is a huge document that you're presenting, with a lot of different activities and action plans for the future within our community, by active transportation, parks, trails, open spaces, right? That's all critical for what people expect in our community, right? So it's good that we're going to visit a lot of different areas that are important to a lot of different people. People that like hockey might not like walking on a trail or going into an open space or being down by the river, right? So that interaction between different people and what their likes are is very important. So I hope we get a wide variety of those people coming out to say, well, you know what, you shouldn't be spending that much money on this, but you should be trying to do this, right? Or the environmental stewardism that you're talking about, I hope we look at that really hard, because it is important. The world's going that way, so I hope that we can figure that out in the future. So I wish you well. I wish you well with this. It's a big undertaking, but at least you planted the seed now for the people to look at it and say, hey, is this a good way that we're going? Is this a bad way, or what can we do to improve it? So thank you for the information that you present today, James. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks, Your Worship. James, obviously it was said, I appreciate the staff, or everyone from Managing Director Mastel to yourself and everyone in between. We appreciate the efforts. But I'm just I'm a bit conflicted, because, I think if we were to initiate this effort on the master plan, et cetera, while we were status quo with services, I think that would have been probably well received. But now we're in a world where we've got 3 facilities that are closed, and you mentioned that we've got a bunch of strategies and financially fit's all mired in there. The optics from the citizen is they're in a COVID environment that they want to go out and do some things. Their viewpoint at this point in time is that the city's services is now less. And I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that we've got this concurrent business going on creating a master plan, but yet having a facilities review that seems to me almost out of sync, that we needed to be on top of kind of working on the master plan and having what I would feel, and maybe the others would feel, that we would graduate from a tired kind of facility into the next facility that is now either the replacement or something close thereof. So without kind of getting into detail, what timelines, assurances can we tell to the general public? I don't want to absolutely short circuit the efforts that you're doing in terms of community collaboration. That's important. But it feels like we kind of got the sands of time clicking by with the Moose and the Kinplex, or never mind the Kinplex, the Crestwood Rec Center, that is now kind of in limbo as a facility that is kind of locked up. So maybe your feedback as to how we can, as counselors, when we're out in the community, look for or provide some feedback to them.
Through the chair, thank you. I couldn't agree more that I think we're in a bit of a perfect storm when it comes to updating our master plan, a facility plan, and looking at the future for the next 50 years, combined with the financial challenges. So when it looks at FFI, Financially Fit Initiative, really the worst position we could be in, though, is to make individual facility decisions without looking at, as I've used the example of the chessboard. And if we get where we start investing in facilities based on immediate issues that we see without stepping back and saying we should have done this differently, or getting to a spot where we say we should have done this differently. When we started talking about repairing aging facilities, we said, let's step back and what does this picture look like as the years grow out? It's very front loaded. And so as we start to make those decisions in the immediate term, as well as with a YMCA, a curling club that's an aging facility, as you start to invest in that, you need to really at some point burn up that money that you've put into it. You need to use that asset and deplete it over time. And so for us to say, well, let's just repair Moose or let's repair this individual pool, we felt it's prudent to say, as we're talking about strategy for recreation going forward, we have to step back and say, don't get in a spot where we say we should have asked the question back then. And that's really why it's all coming at the same time. Yes, there's operational synergies in some of it. In some cases, if we looked at something different for the community, it could cost more. And those are decisions we'd have to make as a community. But we didn't want to get to a spot where we said we should have looked at the whole picture. That's why it's all coming out. It can be confusing and it can be misinformation when, I thought you were done your engagement, now you're doing it again. Recognize that ideally you would do a strategic document and somewhere down the road we'd come back and say, now let's talk about facilities. The problem is the facilities are failing. We know that Moose, we know that Heights, we know that there's immediate challenges with those facilities right now. So kind of a perfect storm when it comes to communicating with the community. And our intention is to get everyone to understand what the problem is, and then we can start talking what the solution is.
No, thank you for that.
Councillor Friesen?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I don't have much to add. I've spoken to this before, and I do again want to thank James for an excellent presentation. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One is that, again, just to repeat what you said, though, that the master plan itself is a strategic guiding document, superseded by, of course, the municipal development plan. They all fit together like stages or steps in a process. And what we're probably, or what the public will be most interested in at this point in time, probably forever, is the targeted community facilities and amenities that you've spoken about. And I think there is a distinction there. That's where the action is. That's where the specific future direction lies at this point in time in terms of discussion related to some of our aging facilities and what do we do next. I take to heart Councillor Hirsch's concerns. And yet, what is first, the cart, the horse, the apple, the orange? How do they fit together? Do they fit together? what's the best process moving forward. So I take to heart what you say. I do understand, though, having been involved with this for the length of time I have, that to plan one or the other in isolation doesn't really take into account the big picture, which of course we're responsible for doing. So it is a sort of a delicate balance of back and forth, back and forth. Look at the whole picture, but look at specific things at the same time. And so the last thing I want to emphasize is this. At this last council meeting, it was very clear that council members wanted to really get a good sense of what the community and the stakeholders thought, wanted, aspired to for the future. And so that is one of the reasons why you see increased community and stakeholder consultation. We really want to make sure we understand, and that the draft document you see is not a decision point yet. It is a draft outlining the realities and the possibilities as we see them for the future. But we really need to hear what everyone thinks. And then you're right, we need to get on this because we have aging facilities and decisions have to be made. So the new council will be dealing with this in 2-3 months. And that's when the decision point will come, and lots of work will be done in between there. So really appreciate all your input, and this is just tremendously exciting. It's kind of scary too, kind of scary and kind of exciting about what the future of facilities and what new innovative things we'll be looking at into the future, recognizing that we don't charge after everything that looks new and great and go building a new facility just because it sounds like it's the new shiny toy, in the world. To really be strategic as well as innovative. So I find it quite exciting, and I thank all of you for your comments.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull?
Your worship. Well, for me, the master plan is, what is our city going to look like in 30 to 40 years? What will be the recreational and parks needs of our citizens? As we all know, our city is growing in two directions. South, Samus Heights, Southridge, Hamptons. It's going north, Ranchlands, parts of Northeast Crescent Heights. All those folks, as the community expands, will want to have recreation facilities that are at least reachable, that has the sufficient parking, sufficient things for their families to enjoy. And I think one of the points I really liked about your presentation earlier is that when I talk to people and going around the city, FLC pool, why is it popular? Because it had slides. It has a wave pool. It has a pool for seniors. It has an aquatic center for swimmers who take the sport up. And so that's what people want. They want to be able to go to a place and take their kids. And they also want to experience, I think you also showed that in your diagrams, that around those facilities is an area of green where people can picnic and families can go and their kids can go into either outdoor pools or an indoor pool. So I think if you don't have a plan, then you don't leave the land available to get those facilities built should you need them. So you can't just wait till you have to put them out in the middle of nowhere where everybody has to go from one part of the city to the other. So for me, the plan is important for us to look at where our city will be and what efforts are we going to do to make sure that we provide recreation and parks facilities to all our citizens. And so for me, we don't close anything. We don't close the Moose. And I understand the Moose may be an exception because it has some safety issues, but if we can Band-Aid it and get it open, we should. We should get the Crestwood Pool open and Band-Aid it until such time as the decision is going to be made by our citizens and the future council as to exactly and where we're going to do all those things and where we're going to find the money. Because we still are, as everybody knows, not financially totally stable yet. We still have a long way to work to get our city back to a balanced budget. So all these things will come into those decision-making things. But if you don't have a plan, then you have no idea what you would do. So you have to start with a plan. Let's talk about the municipal development plan. It's supposed to be 30 or 40 years. We just reviewed one after 9 years. Why? Things change. The world changes. And so nothing can be carved in stone that you can't go back and say, what did we do right? What's not working? And what should we do better? What should we do different? So for me, the basic plan has to be there. How you alter it and review it going forward is very important. So for me, I'm glad that we have a plan looking at the future. The city's going to be building way more in the south than in the north, although there still is room in ranch lands up along the river. But Cimarron, going out to Cooley Ridge, areas in between there are all eventually going to be new communities. And those communities will demand, and rightfully so, their fair share of recreational facilities. So we have to have a plan, a financial plan, as to how we can blend all those things together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dumanowski?
Thank you, Mr. Well, for your presentation. Very informative, and I'm sure there's a lot of public who are curious what the next steps are, and you've outlined that. We're in the middle of an election, and unfortunately or fortunately, there's a lot of suspicion, conjecture, hypothesis out there around what the city's current state of affairs is in regard to the facilities that are closed or open, or when will they reopen, or will they reopen? And so before I go on, I want to ask you that question in an open forum. Are there any final decisions of any kind predetermined for our facilities, whether they stay open or closed?
Through the chair, no, our intention is to come back with our engagement activities. We would face varying degrees of challenges with opening facilities, and Councillor Turnbull pointed out with Moose, we've got a failing ice slab there. But if the decision was to put money back into the budget to reopen those facilities, that's something we could pursue.
So I want to just hearten on a couple of points. One is, and I think you spoke to it, and it's about engaging the public and asking what is the future of recreation and recreational facilities. And the community gets to get excited, they get to get aspirational, get to think about what is it that's going to define the future for their recreation. And we've seen, and you've touched on a few things that have been noticeably different in our community the last handful of years. One is that not all recreation happens inside a facility. COVID has obviously given cause to a lot of people to take advantage of the outdoor recreation that we have. Pickleball is another growing one that you've spoken to. But what we need to gather, and it's not based on a timing of sorts that we willed around this table, but I know the public have said that it's unfortunate that some of these decisions weren't made public before an election, but these aren't decisions that can be hurried. They were not intended to be hurried. And certainly, at the very least, I'll say this. I'm glad that the process that has begun and is continuing is timing out as such, because it gives the public the assurance that no final decision is made. And on top of that, I don't believe, regardless of who's around this table in 2 weeks' time, this council ought to not fetter the next council's decision-making authority. And that's one thing that any new councillor or senior or tenured councillor will hear when they go through their post-election reviews and learnings, and that is you don't want to get in a position of fettering. And so the public needs to see, and candidates need to see that when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to strategic documents, you don't create a finality to those documents right before or aligned with a new election or a new mandate. So the public will have their say, the public does have their say, and certainly the election 2 weeks from today will be that say. Thank you.
Well said. Councillor Somraj?
Thank you, Mayor Cluxton. I just wanted to comment on Councillor Dumanowski's comment about whether or not we made a decision. I think your question misunderstands the public concerns here. It's not about whether or not a decision has been made. It's about whether they have trust in our decision-making process. And I think on that front, we have a lot of work to do. You know, I'm a member of Public Services, and so I've been working on this issue from the beginning there. And, you know, I will, even I have sometimes difficulty recognizing and accepting this final report. There is something about the way we kind of do this consultation process. It's kind of like making sausage, you know, you put all these things and this thing comes out. And it's just hard to, it is confusing, you know, it's even confusing even for a counselor here to understand how these things go. So I will say the election is well-timed here, because I do think we need to take a deep breath here, although recognizing that we have big decisions to make here. You know, Councilor Friesen talked about seeing the big picture here. You're right. The big picture also has to look at the recent decisions that we've made from recreation facilities. You know, it's not clear that we have adequately reflected on the fallout from Co-op Place, which has been very difficult to manage since we opened it. The fallout from the Viner Center, which has similarly seen operational challenges, and the verdict is still out on what the new operator is going to do there. So I am happy that that a new council is going to be able to come and have some fresh eyes to take a look at this. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. If we could get a motion for reception,
So moved.
if we could vote. It's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Will.
Thank you.
The next presentation is from Denise Schmaltz, our Manager of Customer Care and Billing, and Mike Dykstra, our System Support Technician. And they're here to talk about the Knowledge Saves Power initiative, which has been selected as a landmark social marketing case study.
Welcome. Denise, you have the floor. For those of you that haven't seen this, prepare to be amazed. This is quite an interesting presentation.
Well, good evening. And thank you very much for allowing us to showcase some good news and also to share some work that's been done by the City of Medicine Hat, which built a case study and earned a landmark designation for innovation, replicability, and adaptability. The basis of the case study was to determine which social messaging and visual cues placed on a utility statement motivated customers to conserve and reduce their consumption. Sorry. Sorry. In this presentation, we'll talk about the Knowledge Saves Power project, the case study, how it earned a prestigious award, and the benefits seen for the City of Medicine Hat as a result of the project, and what we're looking to do in 2022. The focus of the presentation will be the communications done through the utility billing statement. The Reader's Digest version is that the residential community was divided into 4 different categories, received different types of messaging on their utility statements to see which test group would reduce the most and conserve. The project was initiated by the Utility Business Support Department over the course of 2 years, led by Jared Dickey, Grant Gunther, and Dagan Fowler. The project was to encourage energy reduction and influence our residents about sustainable behavior in a cost-effective and educated manner. Also to enhance the Hat Smart program, which has assisted thousands of customers by reinvesting over $5 million since 2008 through rebates, education, and support on energy conservation projects. This project lasted 2 years in length, and the portion that we're talking about today is the 3-month portion that Customer Care and Billing handled the utility bill communication. A grant was obtained from Natural Resources Canada so that there was no cost to the City of Medicine Hat. Aside from the grant, academic partners provided consulting services. They took the information gathered from the project to formulate a case study and recently published the findings, which earned a designation. The city partnered with MyHeat, Carleton University, University of Ottawa, and the Behavioral Economics in Action at the Rotman Centre. Each partner had something to gain from being involved. MyHeat is a company out of Calgary. They flew over Medicine Hat for 2 days to capture thermal imaging photos of houses so that we could use that as a visual cue on the utility statements. MyHeat was able to verify their effectiveness of their services. The academic partners got to further their research, and the city was able to leverage the experience of these partners for the benefit of the customers. These partnerships allowed the city to pursue innovative and cost-effective approaches to sustainable environment and increase the technologies and processes of the billing department. Collaboration occurred across multiple departments such as business utility support, customer care and billing, mailroom, IT, and corporate communication. The project had many components and objectives. First of all, to better understand residential energy consumption habits and target future conservation. To reduce the energy consumption by 5%. There was energy reduction contests encouraging residents to consume 5% less in 2018 than they did in 2017. There were power down challenges where customers signed up and also bundle up challenges. There was communication provided on the utility statement, and there was also EnerGuide home evaluation audits provided to customers. The investment in the City of Medicine Hat existing AMI infrastructure and technology played an important role and enabled us to participate in this project. Also, the e-utility program, which utilizes the AMI information and provides residents with their consumption patterns, their history, their billing information, also insisted in the customer engagement. In 2017, at the time of this project, the e-billing adoption rate was 14% compared to 45%, which it is today. One of the public-facing components included the utility messaging, and that's the one that we're going to focus on today. And I'm going to turn that over to Mike.
Okay, good evening. So this is about our involvement in this part of the project. And for those 3 months, we had to manage the presentation on about 20,000 statements, divide them up, make sure that everything fit onto, our 2 pages or 4 pages along with all the other utility stuff. The academics actually wanted to take all of it and use all of it and not allow us to put our stuff on there, so we had to kind of argue with them a little bit. Totally different priorities. So over the course of the 3 months, customers would receive 1 of 3 treatments, plus there was a 4th group that was used for the control group. The first month, we provided color statements, and you can see that up there or over there. So the heat maps were in color, the graphs were in color, some of the other things were in color. That was paid for with the the EnerCan grant. The following 2 months were black and white just because there's a limit to what we can pay for. So the graphs are based on each house received a graph of their own consumption history. And then along with that, they received a comparison to similar houses in their neighborhood. And then there was also a 3rd graph that was the high achievers of the energy consumption group. The neighborhoods were not necessarily my house and your house because we're side by side. They were actually built by taking tax information about square footage, age of houses, types of houses, and putting them together and saying, okay, these houses belong in a group. So the comparisons were fair. I wasn't comparing my little bungalow to somebody else's gigantic two-story house. The efficient neighbors, the graph on the bottom, those are the bottom or top, depending on how you look at it, 1/5 of the customers. So this is kind of a bundle of what the system looked like. So on page 1, on the bottom left there, you'll see that on page 1 we had a bit of a teaser. So depending on the messaging, we would say your home's heat loss is better than, less than, sort of a qualitative comparison. And then we provided a dollar amount as to kind of what you could save if you would bring your consumption down to average, or what you were saving by being a better than average consumer. This was done on the graphs and also on the heat maps. And then they were referred to page 4 where we could have more information. So page 4 was pretty much dedicated to this. So they received, on the top there you can see they received consumption for gas and electric for the last 12 months, along with those comparisons I talked about. That was one group. The second group received only the heat map part, and along with the scoring and how you compared to your neighborhood and how you compared to the rest of the city. The city was normalized to 5, so it's not like we were being compared to some green community, in California. It was compared to all of the city was 5. This person has a score of 10. That's not very good, but his neighbors are in the same boat. We also provided some helpful tips as to how you could reduce your consumption, all nicely highlighted in yellow and or gray. And there were links to HatSmart, there were links to Efficiency Alberta, an explanation as to what the heat map meant. Excuse me. And just enough information to try and get people to start thinking about ways that they could, increase their score or bring that graph down a bit. So, what did the case study find? So, as Denise said, more messaging equals better savings. No surprise there, really. So, one of the, so if you take a group of people who would save $150, the ones who received both treatment messages, they reduced their gas by about 4.5%. The ones who received one treatment message, they reduced their gas consumption by about 2%. So it gives us some sort of a qualitative sense of how much this, how effective these different messagings are. In general, the low efficiency, high consumption households decreased their use by 5%. And didn't actually see this one coming. The high efficiency, low consumption people, I guess, felt left out, so they increased their usage by 3%. But really good stuff to know, though, right? Because, like I said, we never expected that. I thought that people who don't use very much, they do it for philosophical reasons, and knowing that wouldn't make them increase it. So the high-use households in treatment 2 decreased their annual energy consumption by about 3.4 million kilowatt hours, which is fairly significant. Bottom line is that the visual cues are very effective in promoting different kinds of conservation, and also that the appeals to the norm, how you compare, they assist, but they can backfire. When we did this before, Denise was controlling the clicker, so I keep on wanting to tell her to advance the slide for me. So, after we were done providing the treatments for those 3 months, what next? The academic partners took all of the data that we provided, and we provided them more data, and they basically crunched this and crunched this and crunched this and asked a bunch of questions and kept on just kind of doing whatever it is that economists do to come to conclusions. Again, we were able to provide them some very good information out of the AMI system because we had that data, so they were able to use it as part of their data management. So the landmark designation recognizes and publishes case studies based on impact and innovation, and as Denise said, so The screening panel is populated by utility providers, as you can see, like BC Hydro, New York Energy, and consulting firms who are all engaged in the utility business. The case study itself was written by Jay Kasserer, and he's the general manager of Tools of Change, which is basically a publishing company that publishes this kind of stuff, from the information provided by our academic partners. And that was just boiling down lots and lots of data. Here is what it looks like. So it was a long time after we sent it off that we actually received this. In fact, I at first thought it was junk mail, and it almost went straight into my junk mail folder because I had no idea what this guy was talking about. I thought he was trying to sell me something. So So I was going to go unsubscribe, and then I just sort of read it a little bit as I was doing that, going, oh, wait a second here, this could be important. So as Denise mentioned, this was all funded by NRCan, by a grant. So it didn't cost us anything, and we didn't make any money at it, but I think we came out ahead because we learned a lot of we learned a lot of things that we wouldn't have known otherwise. Sorry. So, as I said earlier, we were trying to build neighborhoods out of information that we would get from the assessment system, square footage and whatnot. That's not utility billing information. So we had to somehow marry these two data sets together so that we could actually build these neighborhoods. So we became very good at that because of this. Linking the heat map images to each individual bill required that we link our CSM or our utility data to the GIS system through civic addressing, because they provided us with XY coordinates saying this house belongs on this property. And we said, well, that account belongs on that property. So let's put the two together and print that statement. So as Denise said, at that time, only about 14% of our customers were on e-billing. And so we had, some rudimentary, tools that we used to manage this. Because of all the work that we had to do in attaching those different kinds of treatments to it, we were able to develop a much more agile and robust e-billing notification system. And that really helps now that we're up to 45%. We've got a lot of people who are getting e-billing, and the more people you have, the more challenges you have. So we've got tools that we probably would have developed them eventually, but this gave us a big head start on it. With the, through this also, we had a lot of practice and learned a lot about targeted messaging. So we can, on the statements, for example, we can say, okay, you live at this address. On October 18th, this is your polling station. And we can tie that into a map. And we can say, okay, we could, for example, give, on these dates, your water will be down because we're going to be doing this stuff, because we can tie that back into the water mains, stuff like that. We're only beginning to start exploring that. We are sharing data with CityWorks, the work management system, and we're really looking forward to being able to do more with that, because that is also a very geographic-based system. So once we get going there, we'll be able to, again, the sky's the limit. And in general, just knowing what types of communication can resonate with customers. So whether we're doing conservation initiatives or other initiatives, knowing that multiple messaging works, graphics work, the more we can provide that, the better customer engagement we get. And, that will just hopefully allow us to provide better service to our customers. Excuse me. So we received this notification in January after a couple of years of having it disappeared. And so we didn't really have a chance to think about it. We didn't know whether it did any good. We didn't know if it fell off the table. We didn't know anything about the results. So when it came back in, we started to thinking about, okay, now what can we do with this information? Yeah, we learned a lot of concrete things, but can we do this to enhance our own messaging? So one of the things we found last summer was people use their air conditioning and they water a lot. And they don't really realize what that's doing to their utility bill until they get the bill and they look at it. And, you know, if we were all cartoon figured, we'd have eyes bulging out of our heads, right? So we're looking at taking some of this learning now, and in the spring, start to do some sort of a proactive messaging to customers saying, hey, these are some things you might want to consider. And, you know, and we can tie that in with HatSmart initiatives. We can tie that in with our e-billing, e-utility, Customer Connect products. Customer Connect allows you to go in there. You can, you know, look at your consumption from yesterday, today. So if you're using a lot, it's not a bad thing to be able to do that. You can actually set up alerts, so it will say, hey, you know, today you used 120 kilowatt hours. You asked me to let you know that. Also include education on fixed rate options. And most of all, we are going to make sure we use multiple messaging to ensure that we speak to as many people as possible and you know, educate and assist our customers in reducing or at least controlling the one thing they can control, which is their consumption. Okay. Thank you again for allowing us to present this evening. Are there any questions?
Excellent presentation. Councillor McIntosh.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I think this is an outstanding initiative. Anything that we can do to tweak people's behavior to conserve energy is a huge win for our community. I know the mayor is going to appreciate this because we've had many debates on the water cycle over the years. There will be a day in our future when we are dealing with a river that is bone dry. We were close this summer to having to deal with some water rationing situations. So I'm thrilled that coming next year, you guys are going to be focusing on that to hopefully get people to start changing how they view water and use water in our city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Friesen?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that was a great presentation, both of you. Thank you so much. This poses to me a great opportunity. I mean, not just for the city, but all the individual customers and in really having a look at their practice and how they can reduce some of their usage and in fact, their bill. You touched on it and talked about a few of the ways that you can make people more aware and do some education. I'm just, can you elaborate a little bit more? I see huge opportunities there. And maybe it's not a one-size-fits-all, so what might work for education for one household may not be as effective for another. So are you going to do kind of a mass education awareness campaign and then be able to measure? I'm just wondering if that makes a difference.
Through the chair to Councillor Friesen. So part of it will be to have multiple messaging on a statement so we can resonate with as many people as possible. By taking the historical data, and maybe some of the, you know, even some of the geographical data, we can target different messaging to high users. We can target different messaging to people with very big yards, very small yards. You know, we can look for differentials between summertime consumption and wintertime consumption to get a sense of who's watering like crazy, and start to develop different strategies for different classes of customers. We don't want to go all over the place. We don't want to have 20,000 messages for 20,000 customers, but you know, look for those patterns where we can say, okay, this customer, let's hit them harder with the water conservation and how to maintain a lawn. And these customers over here, they don't really need that, so maybe we can hit them a little bit harder with the air conditioning stuff. Or maybe we just, you know, they don't get anything because we don't really want to encourage them to use more. So it's, these are conversations we've just started having, and we'll be looking to you know, talk to some of our customer service people who actually deal with the customers on these things, and they might be able to hopefully provide us with, you know, some idea of what the customers are saying, what the customers are asking. HatSmart is always a good resource for this kind of stuff, and just sort of build it from there and learn, you know, keep on learning from it. So I like your idea of following up afterwards and seeing what worked and what didn't work. That's a lot of data, and I'm not sure we have the skill set to do that, but we can probably get a sense of what's working and what's not working that way. So certainly can't do the kind of analysis that the academic partners did, but I think we can get a sense of where it's going. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm one of the customers that, or my husband and I are one of the customers that moved from to e-billing, probably through that time period, actually. And one thing I did notice was when I got a paper bill long ago, I probably looked at it more, looked at the information more on it than I do on my online version. So I see what it is and I just pay it. So it made me think, customers like that, like me, how are you going to reach me in a different way when I obviously am not responsible enough to look at my my electronic e-billing?
Right. So I actually kind of missed that on my presentation. So all of those things that happened on the paper statement, we had to build an analog for the e-billing part of it. So the page one teaser was right in the body of it. Hey, you know, compared to everybody else, you could save $150. That was the top of your e-billing notification. The My Heat maps were actually just URL links, so they could say, hey, you know, take a look at this. And a lot of people did because we had that teaser on there. And the graphs we actually built in real time and attached them as attachments. Again, with the teaser saying, see how you compare. And we did it all within that space of the e-billing notification, so they didn't have to go into e-billing or e-utility to find out all that information there. We suspect and we're pretty sure that a lot of people do exactly what you do. They get the thing and they pay it, and they don't actually look at the statement. You know, and that's also another good observation that we should maybe look at how we can engage people more with that, a little bit more detail. So, but again, another day. So,
Well, thank you so much, both of you.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Some of you around this table will remember when we tried to implement AMI technology and some of the people that were pushing back against that. This project wouldn't have been possible without that. So that's one of the reasons why we were able to blaze it and lead this trail and take on this initiative. So some positives.
Yeah, and I really think that if, you know, we have a new Customer Connect product that we're just starting to get out there right now, and it's actually a lot easier to use than the other one, and I think it really deserves to be pushed hard so that people can actually make these decisions, you know, in almost real time instead of reacting to it all the time. So, anyway, thank you.
Could I get a motion for reception?
I'll move for the report for reception.
Second.
If we could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
Moving on now to our reports, item 5.1, Public Services Committee meeting of September 27th, for information.
Move the report as indicated. Good gosh.
I'll second.
Questions, comments? We've already dealt with the Parks and Rec plan, and Councillor Hirsch.
I just wanted to speak on item number 2, Your Worship, if no one wants to speak on one, because we've already had it. But, you know, I read that we were looking at, and my hopes were a little bit dashed that we're shutting down the social collective. I'm just wondering if there's a persuasive argument that I can put on the table of keeping it at maybe at the call of the chair. It really is a collection of individuals within the city that I think would be well versed and educated within the partners that exist within the community. And I think even though we had a shining example with regards to you know, community warmth community warmth program that was out there that kind of created this, I really think that there's some benefits to it, and I do sing the praises. As an individual that was kind of in that system a long time ago, within social services, we really did find that there was silos, that everyone's trying to do good work, but yet the collective of getting together and having that community conversation. Not saying that the City of Medicine Hat has to be a leader in it, but they certainly have to part to play. So, and I'm not suggesting, you know, bringing and building all sorts of strategies, et cetera. I just think it's just a bit of a sad piece to see this totally abandoned, and I would like to see it, perhaps if we can keep it alive, even having a review with our community partners once a year, just to keep on pace in terms of what's going on.
Councillor Friesen.
Your worship, through the chair, to Councillor Hirsch, if it's good point, and I would certainly support that. I guess a couple of pieces of additional information that might be helpful to you. You know, having a relook every year, every 6 months is certainly valid and makes total sense to me. There is an executive directors network in the city of Medicine Hat where, if not all, the majority of those organizations are represented. So they do have a table where they can converse and share and talk about, you know, these things in more detail. So that exists. Now, it's not specific to this particular initiative. So there is that. The other thing is, this was formed as an ad hoc committee so that it was project-specific, time-specific, around a couple of particular issues. So this is not meant to close the door. It's meant to keep a door partially open to reestablish an ad hoc committee on another project-specific or project-specific purpose. So I think that probably takes into account your concern, but I do hear you, and I think to build in a review process and make, you know, say, hey, is this working, or should we keep on getting together, would be quite valid.
Go ahead, Councillor Hirsch.
Just a rebuttal. So, I mean, quite frankly, I was, back in the day, I was part of the executive director that through a nonprofit I worked for. But I guess my question is, and that goes back a lot of years, unfortunately, but so does the city of Medicine Hat have an active role in that, in those meetings? Do they participate so that we're understanding? So I guess that's my point. It just feels like in some ways we've detached. We come in and then we detach. And I'm hoping to be part of this collective that perhaps in lieu of the fact that we're shutting down this social collective, that we look towards some sort of involvement even in that regard. So, you know, just again, just make sure that we're connected within the community at some level, and you know, regardless of how we go and how we do it, I just think that was a great response, and I would like to see it continued in whatever fashion that might be. Thank you.
Okay, I really appreciate that. We've had our last meeting, but we can have another at the call of the chair. We can certainly leave it in the confident hands of DM Mastel and probably Lee Pushtenko, and because I think that's a great suggestion, so thank you.
Councillor Varga.
Just one comment to go along through the chair. Rather than being reactive, we could be proactive, right? So if we keep that committee going, or important people within the community to do some of these things, we're actually not in the reactive mode, we're actually proactive, so we're actually seeing what's happening within the community. In this case, it would have been very important if we could have done some work before some of these things were happening, and that group came together, and hopefully they come up with some good things for the future and where we can go with that, because it was a struggle. At MPC, it was a struggle, right, for what we had to do. So to have this group come back to us and say a few things for us would have been very important, and their direction would have been good. So I think it's a great thing if we do continue on with a group like that down in the future. So what Councillor Hirsch says, I think, is important for the future in the city, and being proactive rather than reactive.
Good points. Any other questions or comments? We could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
Our next report's item 5.2, Administrative Committee meeting of September 29th. For adoption and information, adoption of the two tangible capital asset purchases, PDF to PF conversion kit and Unit 10 hot section replacement.
Second.
Councillor Turnbull.
Worship. So, if, with your permission, through to our city manager, to Managing Director Maines, on these two projects, which is $4 million and $3.2 million. And I think it's important for all of us to hear what the need is for this, for our power generation utility business. So perhaps I'll turn it over to Brad. Excuse Excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor Turnbull, and through the chair, and good evening. Tonight, we're proposing two capital asks from council. The first is for an acceleration of a proposed 2022 capital spend for Medicine Hat Water and Power, and it's to perform an overhaul on one of our generation units. Each of these units have a prescribed maintenance schedule, and due to usage beyond what was predicted 3 years ago when this budget period was first formulated, the units need to be overhauled. This is reflective of a strong generation market that we've been experiencing over the last year and the subsequent increased runtime as a result. The second ask tonight is from the same department asking for a new capital spend. It will allow us to utilize our spare engine in both Unit 16 and the under construction Unit 17 if one of those primary generators becomes inoperative. This is all reflective of a very strong power market and subsequent high pricing that we've had over the last 6 to 12 months. But I think it really also highlights, not doing this would highlight the financial risk of not having an operating primary generation unit. Certainly, we've had some very high revenue days, and particularly in the very cold months of last winter. And the payout as it pertains to the replacement or the conversion kit for one of the engines could be quite quick if, for whatever reason, that engine was to go down in one of those high demand times. The other thing we're seeing, and it's a runoff of COVID, is the disruption in the global supply chain, and things that used to be readily available or perhaps could be delivered in a few weeks are not quite that available now as a result of those disruptions. It's our current estimate that if we do have one of those primary generators go down, both repair and replacement times could exceed and potentially go beyond over 12 months. That's an exceptional period of time to be down on one of our units. This capital ask tonight will provide the insurance that we need if one of those units go down, that we can be back up much faster and back into both delivering the power that the residents are accustomed to, and also for our exports and for commercial customers. I have Director Strandland with me tonight, and both of us are available for further questions. Thank you.
Just follow up, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, we have to understand that if this was a private company, like ATCO or ENMAX, their responsibility is to ensure the profitability of their business unit. And they will spend money to ensure that equipment doesn't fail when they need it the most. So we've got two situations here. We've got a machine, the hotspot, is that normally it runs average of 4,000 hours a month, and this one has been running over 8,000 because of the high demand for electricity through the cold spell and the hot spell. And so we can't wait for this thing to break down before we replace it. So this is a business decision. It's not taking taxpayers' money and playing games with it. This is a pure and simple business decision. And as far as the 6,000 units, so we have 4 units. 2 the one that's spare can work for 2 in the plant, but it can't work for 2 in the newer 16 and 17. So the question will always be, well, if they're new and they got warranty, why would you need a spare? If it goes down, we lose 46.4 megawatts of power generation for the profitability of our business unit. So it's twofold. We protect our volume, protect our profitability, and we ensure that we have covered any possible risks to our city for brownouts should one of those go down and we're not able to get replacements for it. So I think this ask for me, as along with my co-chair Jamie McIntosh, is we are totally in agreement that we look at this as pure and simple. This is a business decision, and we have a business case for it, and I think we should go ahead and get this done as quick as possible. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Turnbull. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, if we could vote. That was quick. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our new business items now. Item 7.1 is the Deloitte review of RFP process CMH 2194 Land and Economic Development Services. I think Councillor Hirsch is speaking to this.
Yes, if that's okay with you, Mr. Mayor. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a report. I just want to give some background. As we are all aware, we had a thorough review by Deloitte, who, by the way, has no business dealings with the City of Medicine Hat at this point in time. The motion that was made was deliberate in nature, that there was a level of transparency and non-political, I don't know, involvement, if you will. So I just want to actually do a couple thank yous, and I'll come to that. So this review is actually nothing new. We actually have an auditor that comes to see us in audit committee quarterly, quite frankly, that does reviews of our financial business of the day and gives us feedback. From that, we've received awards. So we really do value our partnership with our current auditors that we have that keep us on the straight and narrow. So essentially what we've done here is almost the same thing. So we've created and requested a review of procedure. So this is now done and in front of us. And one would consider this no different when we do areas of concern on a financial review. This is the same thing we're at as well. So I do want to point out that we, as council, requested that Deloitte come to us in a public setting. From that, they declined, and you know, I respect the fact that that was their decision, and in the spirit of openness and transparency, I'm a bit disappointed, but at the same time, we have the report as indicated from Mark and Shaheen. So we did, just as a background, the presentation was made to us in closed, from which we were able to receive the information, digest it, and now here we are bringing it out, quite literally minutes from the meeting that we had. I guess when you have a chance to digest the document, a couple things I'd like to point out, that again, in the preservation or the integrity of the process, I want to thank Managing Director Eggert, who had to do this out of the corner of his desk to respectfully follow and really institute the dialogue that they had with Deloitte. So thank you, Managing Director Eggert. You did a phenomenal job in terms of what you were able to deliver us. And the fact of the matter that it's here today, even in the face of an oncoming election, it really doesn't matter. So for that, I want to thank you for your professionalism and due diligence on that. So well done. I do want to thank the auditors that presented to us today. They were very professional in their methodology, very methodical, and I appreciate and thank them for their due diligence on their end in order to get us the report. So moving on into the report, we asked really the tough questions. So are we in trouble or not? And quite frankly, the report indicated that there was no material, which means no substantive or major flaws with the process that was followed. There was 5 suggestions that are more administrative in nature that quite frankly, when I use that analogy of the auditors in the financial world, they give us feedback all the time. So this is some things that we're gonna absolutely absorb and look to change as far as policy goes. But in the words of our auditor, they were not material to the process, and they were, I believe, 5 items of note that we need just to tighten up our policies. So with it, Mr. Mayor, this is the presentation and the report, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to receive or administration.
So are there any questions of council? I mean, council's already had a chance to digest this, so perhaps, Councillor Summers?
Thank you, Mayor Tillotson. I don't have questions, but I'd like to make comments.
Go ahead, yeah.
The reason why this process was initiated was council was responding to pressure from the public about concerns that they had about the procurement process in this instance. Obviously, we took that feedback seriously there. This report is one step in the process. I think it's important to realize here that in these situations, it's not just about laying blame, it's also about finding an opportunity to learn and get better there. And in this here, while they found that we haven't made any major mistakes in this issue, they have made a number of recommendations that I do think are important, and I think that'll be the next step for the next council to address there. And I think two of the ones that stand out for me is they've suggested that we update our code of ethics, which was last updated in '94. I have no idea how much code of ethics have evolved during that time, but that'll be an interesting question to watch. The other issue that they mentioned here is that to introduce a notice of planned procurement, which would just give the public more time when any of these contracts are initiated. So I think those are helpful suggestions for us to take moving forward.
Any other questions, comments? All right, if we could get a motion for reception.
So moved.
I suppose a reception and adoption, I suppose, there are some receipt for information, okay. That was unanimous, thank you. We have to do the, let's do the collective agreement.
All right, so one of our new business items was the collective bargaining between the City of Medicine Hat and the IBEW. I believe that Councillor Drumanowski is going to speak to this.
Your worship, wish to bring forward collective bargaining update with Local Union 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. It's a motion for ratification. The collective agreement between the City of Medicine Hat and the Local Union 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers at Electric Distribution, as well as the collective agreement between the City of Medicine Hat and Local Union 254 of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers at the power and water treatment plants, both expired on December 31st, 2019. Although collective bargaining was interrupted and delayed at various times by the COVID-19 pandemic, the city and the union met on several occasions in 2020 and 2021 and made a good faith effort to renew those agreements. In May 2021, the union made an application pursuant to Section 65 of the Alberta Labor Relations Code to have a mediator appointed to assist the parties in reaching a settlement. On September 17th, 2021, the mediator issued recommendations for terms of settlement that, if ratified by the city and the union, would form renewal collective agreements for the term of January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2023. The mediator's recommendations for terms of settlement provide, inter alia, for general wage adjustments in each year of the term, including potential adjustments for 2021 and 2022 based on changes to the Alberta Consumer Price Index as follows. 1.1% effective January 1st, 2020, 1% effective January 1st, 2021, 2% effective January 1st, 2022, and 2% effective January 1st, 2023. As such, I move that the mediator's recommendations for terms of settlement are hereby adopted and approved and ratified.
Can I get a seconder? Questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. And that was unanimous, thank you.
All right, Medicine Hat Public Library Board recruitment. We've had some turnover on the board, and in order to keep things moving along, council will be appointing 3 positions tonight for a 1-year term. City manager will be handing out the ballots of a secret ballot, and he and I will tabulate the results. We'll have a quick recess. Mr. Chair, I'll announce the 3 lucky winners, expertly tabulated in record time. For the Public Library Board, for a term ending December 31st, 2022, Simone Harty, Steve Kryzak, and Kyle Pudwell.
Could I get a motion for adoption
So moved.
Second.
and adoption and to destroy the ballots? Sorry. If we could vote? and that was unanimous. So I have some final parting words. It's been a long night, and some of you may want to leave, but I'll try to get through this. If I struggle a little bit, it is because it has become fairly emotional around here lately with the election and the loss of 3 colleagues. So this is actually a sad, yet a wonderful evening, to tell you the truth, because some of us are moving on. And tonight I want to thank the 3 sitting councillors that won't be returning, as this is their last meeting for at least 4 years. Probably one of the most difficult terms to have served, to be elected to serve on a municipal council, has been these last 4 years. I want to thank each of you for your willingness to serve and to be collaborative during some of the darkest days while working to find solutions together. Coming to council with an open mind, and in my opinion, you always voted, all of you, always voted your conscience and what you believe to be in the best interest of this city and its residents. Councillor Somraj, Chris, we watched Chris sit up there in the gallery right there for approximately 3 years before he was on this council. He was studious and did his homework, and not just showing up a few weeks before election, but for 3 years. You could tell he truly wanted to make a difference, and a relative unknown at the time, but he pulled off a second-place finish his first time running for council. Once on council, he continued his studious ways and always questioned established processes. He would not accept the answer, "This is how we've always done it." And he provided a perspective that often caused me to pause and to quarrel with him over the years. But he also made me think and reevaluate. He has served this community well, and it is Medicine Hat's loss that he will not return, but it will be our residents' gain somewhere else, wherever he chooses to use his skills. While Chris may have had aspirations for the mayor's chair, he has decided to pursue other opportunities, and we may well see him again in the future. And while we didn't know each other at all before we became on council, I do now call him friend. I enjoyed our bi-monthly conversations, and I did learn a great deal from you, Chris. Councillor McIntosh, Jamie. Jamie has served tirelessly for 8 years. I think his spouse is up here, while working full-time as a school teacher. Jamie and I actually did know each other in our past lives as kinsmen and in various involvements in the community. And speaking of kinsmen, that is what ultimately dragged Jamie here from Edmonton, was the kinsman. But let's be honest, it was actually a Connette that brought you here. She's sitting right up there. Jamie has never been the one to speak very much in council chambers, but look out when he does decide to speak up. Everyone listens when Jamie speaks. He didn't talk just to be heard. He spoke and we listened. I have appreciated his calm and methodical approach to all issues and wish him well in his future endeavors. Perhaps more travel, leisure time. Jamie and I share a love of Mexico, and I'm sure he's going to be spending more time there. And Jamie, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, you remind me most of me when I was an alderman. As with Chris, I enjoyed our private meetings when we talked about this great city and how we could make it better, family and personal hopes and dreams. Councillor Friesen, Julie. As the longest-serving councillor in this room tonight, I'm struggling to caption a career of such magnitude in a few sentences. There was a poster on the wall in Larry Godden's office when he was city clerk. It said, "Public service, it's what we do." Public service, it's what Julie Friesen does. She is public service. I'll be the first to admit that the lack of female representation on this council in my last 14 years is unacceptable. However, Julie more than made up for it. She was the voice of experience. You can't shake her. She knows her material and can communicate it so that everyone can understand. She is a great communicator and loves planning and strategy and organization. As I've seen, please don't take this the wrong way, this job can be a soul-sucking siege of nastiness, Jerry Maguire. Julie never succumbed to that level. Never, ever did she succumb to that in all of her years. She would never say a disparaging word about anyone, even as they relentlessly questioned her judgment, but she just showed optimism and hope on display every single day. Julie loves Medicine Hat, and her selfless service needs to be remembered for years to come. I actually hope that the next council finds a way to honor your service in some sort of meaningful, long-term way. Julie should have been mayor. And I'm going to say this because had she been successful in becoming mayor, I would never have been mayor, because she would have demonstrated her skills so well. You would have seen such great leadership as a first female mayor of this city that I would have never been able to beat you. And you would have maybe served as quite a long-term mayor. When I was first elected, Julie didn't know what to think of me. The Clugston boys came with a bit of a reputation. But she gave me a chance and took me under her wing and taught me grace, optimism, self-discipline, and most importantly, to be humble. I consider her my greatest mentor on council over these years, and still to this day, to this very day, she has provided me guidance and advice. As with Chris and Jamie, I deeply appreciated our one-on-one time. I hope the next council, I said this already, finds a way to honor your years as a public servant. So all the best to the three of you as you pursue a new dream, whatever that might be. I'm excited for you, actually. Public service can be like a prison, and now you are walking out free with new and renewed hope with your head high, and you have done your community a great service. And if this may sound a little like a eulogy, it's not. It's actually a celebration of your success and your public service. To the rest of you, the other four of you, best of luck. We're going to need that experience the next 4 years. And it has been my pleasure to serve this community as mayor for the past 18 years, 14 years consecutively on this council. So final words of just a favorite poet of mine. I won't do the whole thing. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence, as far as possible, without surrender. Thank you. Councillor Dumanowski.
Your worship, I'm going to struggle to top your words of wisdom and gratitude toward the number of people who have indicated retirement from politics, at least for now. And it certainly by no means does do my comments, and I would imagine yours or anyone else's, suggest that we will all be back around this table or not. But I think there's a commitment and a hope that we love public service, as we attested to Councillor Turner's, passion for public service in every way, shape, or form. It is something that can be challenging, but it's in your blood, and it's something that you find quite gratifying, and you're able to elevate yourself above the nastiness that goes with it, because there is a lot of goodness and a lot of relationships that you get to build because of it. But I do want to take a moment, if I can, very quickly to speak to the three individuals. I want to speak to Chris, first of all. And I don't want to sound like the guy who's been here a long time and has more experience or more energy or more knowledge than anyone else. One thing I've learned about being around here is that it takes a team to move things forward, and that is one thing that a current council and a new council has to understand, is that you can have a lot of ideas on your own, but if you can't build consensus and gain it, you're a lone wolf and you're left to stand on your own. But I will say that the passion that these three, the passion they brought to this role was very much visible and noticed by the public and by this council. Chris, very quickly, when you first got on council, I recall being invited, or I invited you, I can't remember, to a coffee, and it was the first time that we had a chance to actually chat. We went to station, and I recall during the campaign hearing a lot about you and hearing about the hard work you were putting in to be noticed and to gain a seat around this table. And I think the mayor indicated the performance was deserving of that effort. And one thing I know is we didn't always agree. But as I've said to a lot of people, I don't even get agreement around my dinner table at home, so I can't expect to get unanimity around a council table. But you've always brought a perspective that is fresh and at times challenging, but at the same time reflective of what you feel very strongly is coming from the public. And I absolutely think that is not only valued but necessary around a council table, because the last thing the public wants to see is everybody agreeing, kumbaya, every decision's 9-0. So good debate, good dialogue, good contested philosophical views is healthy for a council. So thank you for your service. Jamie McIntosh, I I can't help but say, we never, even though we're not, BFFs, if I can use that term, because we both work in education, we have that similarity, and that is working with children, working with the youth, tomorrow's generation, and I love that about you, and I'm not trying to put educators up here, but I really love that about you. And one of the things that sometimes people, and I've had to feel this every time I run is, well, why would you want to be in public service when you already have that public role as an educator? And I said, because it goes hand in hand. And I think it really is an extension of who you are and what you want to show your students, what you want to show your parents and the community. And you did so much for this community before you even got to this table, and it was noticed. And the mayor said it very well. Sometimes around this table and over the years, there are people who tend to be more talkative and less talkative. But when the ones who are, and I don't want to say that you were quiet, but the ones who are less talkative doesn't mean that they're shy or reserved or they have nothing to contribute. They just want to contribute meaningfully when it happens, and that's you in totality. I mean, you really do bring attention when you're talking around this table, and I want to thank you for your commitment to this council and to this community, and I know we're going to see much more of that, and we're educators, and I'm still around, so one way or the other, we're going to bump into each other. Julie, Councillor Friesen, I've had the opportunity now for 20 years to be around the table with you. We had one recess, but we maintained our friendship during that time. When I look at the numbers here, and math was not my major, but you have been around this table and sat through, if you attended the majority of the council meetings, which I know you did, just under 600 council meetings. Thousands of committee meetings. And that's not to underscore anything but your commitment to the public role that you have been for 20 years. But when it comes to the public role, you're always fashioning your thoughts around what is going to best serve this community, what is in the best interest of the people. And it's no mistake that you've been tied to public services probably the majority of the years you've been around the table. And it's one of those committees that honestly, you got to be a little bit careful to take on, because it is so much, it's so connected to the community that you can't help but get pulled in and challenged by everything that it is involved in that portfolio. But it took a person like you to make sense of it, a person like you to get others around you to make sense of it. And you always have and always had the public's best interests at heart. I really absolutely believe that. So your ability to articulate and express, the mayor said it, is second to none. I sat here as a new councillor back then, alderman in 2001, absolutely admiring your ability to make connections and talk and appeal to the public and find the words and make sense of it and end it like a performance like no other. And I found myself wanting to learn from you. And I mean that in every way, shape, or form as a appreciation for everything you've done. You reached out to me as well when I first got on council, and you became a mentor to me. And that mentorship led to a friendship. And, being around this table, there are different personalities and different opinions and philosophical views. And in some cases, we're closer to each other, and in some cases, a lesser extent. But you and I, if I'm able to be privileged to say, have maintained a strong friendship all these years. It doesn't mean we always agreed. In fact, I remember when Julie and I first disagreed, or I disagreed with her, I felt so bad that after the meeting, I chased her down and I apologized. I said to her, I'm sorry, I disagreed with you. I don't remember what the issue was. She said, it's okay, that happens, and don't worry about it. So it's funny how those things stick in your mind, but I want to thank you for your friendship. First and foremost, I want to thank you for letting me be a student of yours, and for most of all, your commitment to this community and the years that you've poured into every decision that has ever affected this community in the last quarter century. It's been incredible, and you deserve, and Howard deserves the opportunities that are next before you. So I just want to say thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull?
I guess I should turn my mic on, right? That'd be good. I'm going to start with the young man who sits next to my left side here, young Chris Samraj. I first met Chris through my wife because he was running an organization. I shouldn't say it's an organization, it's a movement, right? Petra Kucha. And she was at the Esplanade, and she said 750 people. And he got a standing ovation, people yelling and cheering. And she said, that boy's got something. And I'll tell you, he does. He's intellectually brilliant, brilliant. He can take 100 pages and boil it down very quickly to about 5. I mean, he's just that sharp. And Chris and I are more friends than we are colleagues because we talk every day to each other almost. And we talk about what we would like to achieve in life, what we think. He'll tell me why he wants to vote for this way, and why am I voting that way, and we'll have some really good discussions. And so I'm going to miss you if I get reelected. If I don't, then I've still got you as a friend, and we'll keep that friendship going. So this council will miss you terribly, because you do have that. And I don't know if you've ever read his blogs. Just read his blogs, how he writes. It's almost like should be teaching a professorship at a big university. He's just that sharp. Jamie McIntosh. Jamie and I sit on 2 committees together, audit and energy and infrastructure. And when I first got on, I didn't know Jamie. We never bumped into each other. We're not in the same social circles. And we'd go to the meetings, and the mayor said it right. Doesn't say a lot, but oh my gosh, you can hear a pin drop when he does. His thoughts are always, or his ideas are always very thoughtful. And yes, he's a teacher, but I also understand he's a pretty good businessman, because he has that good business sense when he sits on both our committees. And I see it, and I appreciate it. And I know his love for children and teaching is probably his passion, but he does have a great business sense, and he brought that to both committees and to this council through the 4 years. And I will miss seeing you. And hopefully we will keep in contact some way through the next several years. I've never served with Councillor Friesen before. I wasn't on the council that she was. I only served 3 years way back in 10, and now this 4 years here. But what I really liked about Julie, she would allow me to come to public services meetings and ask the questions that I wanted to ask, and never gave it another thought. I can remember way back in 10 and 13, if you went to some of those committee meetings, no, you're not getting to ask any questions. But Julie was always there to say, sure, we'll listen to what you have to say, and I appreciated that. And I appreciate the fact that, can you imagine what it's like? Somebody said to me, are you running? And I said, you know what? It's easy to say you're running. It's not so easy to run. So for you to run all those, how many? 6, 7? 7 campaigns. 7 campaigns, they take a lot out of you, right? They do take a lot out of you. And but I've appreciated you and I having our little talks, and I appreciate what you bring to this council. And I always kid her about what outfit she's going to wear, yellow or red, and so we get a sort of kick out of that. So I will miss you if I get reelected. I think that You bring a totally softer viewpoint than some of us hard-nosed guys around the table. But I wish you all the very best of luck, and thank you for being giving public service, and you'll go down as probably one of the better councilor or alderman ever to serve. Thank you.
Well said. Councillor Hirsch?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't have a couple things to say as well. We'll go with Chris as well. I as well didn't know Chris when he first got elected, and most recently we just had a coffee not too long ago, and I made the mistake of saying, he kind of came out of nowhere at the first election, and he said, wait a minute, I prepared years and years and years, Darren. So, and I absolutely take it back, and you're absolutely correct, Chris. One thing I will give you is the absolute level of studiness that you have on this. You take on a project, you just engross yourself into it to understand, and your thirst for knowledge knows no bounds. I found you inspirational and aspirational. We've had numerous discussions at a very, almost a philosophical level about what it means to serve, what is an effective tax structure in the future, and what does that look like, and how can we embody that and roll that into something that is a bit more pragmatic? Because one of the things that Chris and I almost have a divide over is I try to keep my feet on the ground and be maybe a bit too much of a pragmatist, but yet here's a guy that's got a lot of ideas and doesn't let that stop him as far as trying to convey. And quite frankly, I still want to have our discussions because I think you have a lot to contribute, and definitely enjoy our coffee discussions, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and I know you're going to succeed in whatever you decide to do, so congratulations. Jamie, sat to the right of you or to the left of you for the whole term. You are very understated, and I guess I'm almost the opposite, I guess. I sometimes feel like I blather on sometimes, but no different between the both of us. What we share is a passion for this community, and it knows no bounds. And, I'm going back a few years. I remember if it was J.P. Morgan or something, that it was when J.P. Morgan talks, everyone listens. And when you talked, my friend, everyone listened. And I think because, and I sat with you with audit, you're so reflective, you seek to understand, you asked very pertinent questions, and I loved your perspective because it really did make a difference on me and allows me time to reflect. And one of the things that I really take away from this council is how balanced we are. Everyone had a contributing voice. Some of it might have been different from what everyone's perspective was, but what I love about it is that meant we came and decided on really good decisions based on some balanced input from many different people. So for that, I thank you. And again, one thing that I didn't really know you that well. I actually, of course, knew your wife quite well. There's some bloodlines there, so hopefully that doesn't go away anytime soon in my relationship with you, Jamie. You do have a stubborn streak, I have to give you that, because it did frustrate me when I was begging you for the last 6 months, please stay on, or whenever you decided not to run, I was begging and begging and begging. You were so stubborn and said no. But you know what, you're a man of principle, and I thank you for your service to the citizens of Medicine Hat, and certainly to this council, so thank you very much. Julie Friesen. So the three of us actually sat on city council way back in 2004 for 3 years. That was the 3-year term back in the day. And it was funny, and I hearken back to Councillor Dumanowski's comments. Julie was so seasoned. You just walk in the room, and everything was so easy and free and easy for Julie because I think she was just well in control. I agree with the mayor. I think that from the female perspective, it was well represented in you, and I don't even want to talk about gender because your contributions, quite frankly, went above, doesn't matter, male, female, doesn't matter. You were a force to be reckoned with. You were absolutely adamant and comfortable in your role and your position on council, and the decisions that you made were well thought out. You always had a soft spot for our community, the ones that maybe were disadvantaged, and not saying that you always cued on them, but you certainly had that perspective, and I thank you for it. And sometimes that sort of voice that needs to kind of be in the room, you were the one that provided it. And, you know, again, I as well with Robert, you know, kind of would look around the room and start looking for mentors and get some feedback and some skills as what it means to be a good alderman / councillor. And you certainly set the standard, so thank you for that. You know, it was interesting in the decade that was in between, I come here with a couple different hats, and always had a refreshing smile at me. It was very welcoming when I came back to say hi in whatever capacity I was in. And that really resonated with me, and I want to thank you for still taking the time to be very friendly with me. And I think over the years we did develop a friendship, and I appreciate your contributions again to the citizens and certainly this council. Well-deserved, long-standing terms, and congratulations on a fine career as public servants. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Very nice words. Councillor Sonraj?
Your worship, I want to go before Chris, please. if
Yes,
that's
you made
okay.
it, you made it
All right,
backdoor, you made
so-
a deal over there? Okay. Councillor Varga?
All the accolades are well-deserved for these people. Today, my wife asked me, she says, is there something wrong? I was getting ready to come to council, and she says, is something up with you? Have you had a bad day? Or, well, you look like something's bothering you. So I guess what was bothering me was today that some of the team members are going away today. That's important. In my hockey career, it was always about the team, right? And how good the team was. And with the team comes weaknesses and strengths, and I think as a council, we tried to do that through 4 years, and with Jamie, 8 years, of course, and with Julie, the same thing. With Chris, the 4 years, I didn't know Chris also before coming on to council, so the team was very important. Did we agree to everything that we agreed to? Sometimes it looked like we did, but really, in certain cases, we didn't agree to everything that came forward in open council, but we did have great discussions on it. I didn't know Chris before, and we've had our battles over the last 4 years. We've had some tough conversations and going both ways from him and from me, so those seeds are presented, and he knows how I feel a lot of times, and I know how he feels. And the accolades for being a smart person is very well deserving. Jamie, I met you way back with daughters were playing soccer in Kamloops, and we shared a beer or two or three that time in Kamloops, and I think it was a great start of a friendship, even though we didn't know it. And then all of a sudden, we were running for council at the same time, and that friendship, I hope, lasts for a long time. With my daughter being in the teaching profession also, so there's lots to talk about whenever we get together. So the knowledge that you have and the quietness that you have is well appreciated, because again, when you talk, things happen and people understand when you say those words. So it was a pleasure being part of your team for 8 years. Julie, what can I say? Fun time whenever we go away to represent the city. Some of our dinners and suppers that we had together with you and Howard were priceless, I must say, because sometimes that conversation and that fun part lasted for a lot of hours into the evening all the time, right? And I'll never forget the wine that you drink, all right, and how much fun you have with that, and enjoy your wines, and so be it, right? So it was fun to have you as part of the team for the while too that I've been spending on council. So I appreciate all that you've done. The accolades are well deserving for how you treat people and for the public service that you do give to the people of Medicine Hat. And you will be lost too with being part of the city, because it's no different than Councillor Turner, right? They had a good insight into what was happening, and everything you did was usually for the betterment of the people of Medicine Hat. And if you didn't get that way, you tried to get it to that way. So you're going to be missed for the next little while, and hopefully somebody can take your place, right? That'll be a hard job to do, right? So to have the demeanor that you have, it'll be tough to do that. But we're going to miss all three of you guys and ladies in the next council, if we do get on council again. But I think you're going to be missed with what you gave to the city for the last 4 and 8 years. I appreciate it. So good luck in your future endeavors, and sorry that you're leaving the team. It's almost like retirement or getting traded to another team. So it's a tough thing to handle sometimes when you become good friends with the people around the table.
Thank you. Councillor Sommer, did you?
Thank you, Mayor Gluckson. I remember sitting in the gallery, actually, the last meeting before the election in 2017, and everybody was going around kind of doing what we were doing now, and I remember rolling my eyes, like, give me a break. But now that I'm sitting here and I have that perspective, my perspective is a little bit different there, because it's a weird, odd dynamic working on council, because we are, in a sense, a team of rivals. Everybody's got their own ideas. But then how do you balance that working as a team? It can be a very challenging relationship to kind of balance that. And Brian alluded to that. There's a lot of difficult conversations there. And because we see each other so often, it is a weird kind of community because, the 9 members of council and senior administration, and even Colin is part of this community. Like, I see these people more than I see my friends and family there. So I think what you're hearing tonight is, a farewell to that community that's been going for 4 years. But I wanted to take a moment and talk about the most challenging relationship is actually not between me and my fellow councilors, who, generally I can understand. I think the most challenging relationship is actually between me and administration and trying to understand their mindset. Because if you've never spent any time in a large organization, trying to understand what it's like to be in charge of 1,000 employees, to do the kind of complex work that the city does, that has been the most difficult thing for me to bridge. And there's a lot of criticism, but I think what people need to keep in mind is that, of course, we can always improve. But there are a lot of people that work here that are working very hard, and I know the senior administration team, and I know Bob, you in particular, these guys are here from 6 in the morning to 6 at night. They're working very, very hard. I would say the most interesting event that I've been to in my 4 years here was the CAO Awards there. And they have that with city employees, and they talk about all the different kind of interesting experiments the different groups have done, and the city manager kind of recognizes some of those achievements. So, I hope for the people that come in here that will be sworn in next month, that they have an appreciation for the difficulty of this job and the people that work in it. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thanks, Your Worship. Very appropriate that tonight is my last council meeting. About an hour and a half ago, my computer totally died on me, so I'll probably be leaving that sitting right here when I leave tonight. It's been truly an honor to sit in this chair, and I thank the citizens for giving me that chance. I want to leave tonight with just a couple quick messages for the candidates who are going to be taking over a number of these chairs. The first message I have for you is that those of you that have all the preconceived notions of what's going to happen and what needs to happen with the city, you are going to be shocked once you sit down and you start gathering the information. Your own ideas are going to be challenged significantly. So I wish you well on that learning process. Number 2, it is the team. The team I have been privileged to work with the last 4 years and going back to 2013, always respectful groups of people. And as I said earlier tonight with Councillor Turner, didn't matter how the discussions went and perhaps some harsh comments made, At the end of the day, there was such a level of respect, and I want to thank all of you for bringing that every single meeting. The last thing I want to say, the last several months have been, there's been a lot of negativity out in the community. A lot of it ugly, slanderous, not positive for our community. And I want to say that your community is being served by an administration team, a leadership team that is exceptional. And at the end of the day, council paints the picture of where they want this city to go and provides the oversight, but it's the leadership team that is running this city. So to the citizens, this city is in good hands. Please elect a council that can come together and work well as a team. And I thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you, very well said. I think, oh yeah. Thank you, Cassie. Thank you. Councilor Friesen? Yeah.
Well, here, I'm going to take this off. I did want to make a few comments just because I've been here for so long and I want to drag out our meeting even longer. I can't help it. I wanted to make a few comments and express, my sincere, heartfelt appreciation for my years on council and the honor and the privilege of serving through those years. Lots of history and memories and too many to mention, but, I served with 4 mayors and the respective councils, served on all of the standing committees, and many of the other council involvements, years ago, economic development with my, dear departed friend, Alderman Wayne Craven, helped design the Esplanade, many years on the Police Commission, 7 chiefs, the fire service, the library, Shortgrass, Cypress View, Medalta, Allied Oil and Gas when we had it, the intermunicipal committees that we share with our regional neighborhood councils. And I was also fortunate to serve on a couple of AUMA committees and also a few provincial association boards. Been very, very blessed in my involvement. Now, I've got lots of stories about being away with many of you, but I won't tell those, Brian. I won't say anything, but I do have some great stories I'll share another time. I do want to make some thank yous, though. I want to thank my mentors. You've all been mentors. We're all mentors to each other. We learn so much from each other all the time, and for that I am more than grateful. A couple I wanted to mention Ted Grimm. He was the mayor when I first came on council. A very different style, but I learned a tremendous amount from him. Graham Kelly, who left us last term, served with him all of the years prior to that. One of the most accomplished politicians I've ever met. And Jim Hirsch, your dad, became a very good friend of mine, ran several of my campaigns, have a deep, abiding respect for Jim Hirsch. And I want to mention Andy McGrogan, who's right over there, who I've had many years of interesting arguments, discussions, and a lot of learning from this wonderful man who made his way through the police service and ended as chief just recently. I want to thank all the councils, past and present, all of you who were here and aren't here anymore. And Robert, I wanted to say a special thank you to you because you have been I just got to know you so well, you and Pam and your kids. We traveled when some of your kids were babies, and you have been such an amazing colleague to me. I've learned so much from you, and you've been such a good friend. And I'm not going to say that you were a friend. I'm going to say that you are a friend, and I thank you. I want to thank I especially want to thank all the employees of the City of Medicine Hat, the 1,000+ of you, who give everything you have to the work you do. And the work you do is in service to this community. That's what you do. You go above and beyond. I think you're an amazing group of people, and we wouldn't have this community without all of you. It's really important that that is said, and that your families are thanked for giving you the time to be in service of your community like you have been, and that you are. I also particularly want to thank Mayor Clugston. You're right, we weren't quite too sure, think about each other. And we've grown to really have an amazing relationship of respect and trust, and one that it tries to envision the future in the best possible way, and I just appreciate that so much. I thank you for your leadership, and I thank the administrative team, all of you, but the administrative team for the leadership and support you've shown to me through my years on council and in my various involvements. I am in awe. I mean, I'm in awe of what the skills that you bring to the table. I'd like to thank my family for supporting me. My husband was here. I don't know, he left. I'm not sure why, but we'll say he probably didn't want to hear me droning on. But family is very important. Without our families supporting us, we can't do the work we do. And most importantly, I wanted to take a minute to thank the people of Medicine Hat for the amazing opportunity to serve you. Now, you don't always like all of us, and I always said you like 50% of us, 1 week, and the next week you like the other 50% of us because you're mad that week, and it goes back and forth. But that's not what it's about. We need to hear your opinions. We need to hear the variety and the diversity of opinions. We need to argue and disagree, and we need to have a respectful communication to make the best possible decisions. So thank you, people of Medicine Hat, for my ability to serve. And thank you, all of you, for your incredible gifts that you bring to this community. I didn't want this to be about me. I don't mean it to be about me. There are 2 others who are not putting their names up for re-election. There are 4 of you who are. And I just want to wish you the very best, all of you, in whatever future endeavors you undertake, because you are such amazing people. You will be successful in whatever you choose. You have all helped plant the seeds of wisdom and shared your experience and helped me become a better person, that's for sure. And like Brian said, you're my team. So I don't want to say bye. And I'm not going to. So it's been my extreme honor and privilege to serve on this council for 7 terms. And I have always and will forever remain fervently committed to the wonderful city of Medicine Hat. Sorry.
Thank you, very well said. I see no more business before this council. We are permanently adjourned.